Dear students, today we are going to learn about the biography of John Milton, who is writer of Paradise Lost. We are going to discuss about the age of John Milton. We are also going to discuss about the element of Renaissance found in the poetry of John Milton. And lastly, we are going to discuss in this video about the summary of Paradise Lost, book number 1. Dear students, John Milton was born on December 9, 1608 in Bread Street, London. His grandfather's name was Richard Milton, and Richard Milton was an ardent follower of Roman Catholic. John Milton's father's name was John Milton, and when he converted to Protestant religion, the grandfather Richard Milton disinherited his son. The poet's father settled down in London, and gradually he established himself as a prosperous law stationer and moneylender. He was a man of learning and ability, and he had a great love for music. As far as mother of John Milton is concerned, she was a very refined lady of high social grace, and she has a deep interest in religion and local charities. John Milton's parents knew that their son was very much talented and studious and having a scholarly approaches in learning. Now, we are going to discuss about the age of John Milton. The age of Milton is very complex and a decisive age in the history of England. It was the age of remarkable paradoxes and contradictions. The age of Milton was in more than one sense an age of transition. It was the age when urbanization in England was taking place. Economic prosperity in England continued to grow steadily from the Elizabethan age to the age of Milton. As far as the political scenario of the age of Milton is concerned, it was the age of revolutionary changes that came over the national life in England in the 17th century. The age-old political conventions and conventions crumbled down in the 17th century, and new democratic ideals grew up instead. One of the most important theories was the theory of the divine rights of king, which began to be openly challenged. The King Charles I and the Parliament during the age of Milton came into headlong collision. The revolt against the king touched its point of culmination when Charles I was deposed and then put to death by the parliamentarians under the leadership of Cromwell. Dear students, now we are going to discuss about the elements of Renaissance found in the writing of John Milton. It was the age of humanism. It asserted the essential dignity of man. Man was believed to be the center of all the creation and all the philosophy. The goal of life could be achieved not only by the study of God, but by the study of man. Milton was a humanist in both his method and aim. He shows that in the Paradise Lost, from the beginning to the end, he is convinced of God, of the existence of evil, of the inevitability of retribution, and of the hope of man from salvation. The second very important element of the age of Renaissance is individualism. As per the philosophy of Renaissance, a life in which man is not responsible for his own actions is meaningless. In Paradise Lost, John Milton propounds the theory of freedom of will, which is the cardinal principle of the Renaissance philosophy. Another important element of Renaissance is Christian humanism. Milton's religious views were greatly modified by this humanism. John Milton may be called the last person to continue the tradition of classical reason and cultural connotation fused with the Christian faith, which had been the main line of European development after the Renaissance. John Milton stood as the last person of the Elizabethan writers to succeed in combining a passionate love of beauty with religious fervor and moral idealism. John Milton's Paradise Lost expresses the purpose of justifying the ways of God to man, which deals with the biblical material. On account of the constant presence of the Renaissance element in Milton's poetry, he is called as the last Elizabethan or the poetical son of Spenser. Dear students, you are also going to find love of beauty in the writing of John Milton, which is another element of Renaissance writing. Beauty is central creed of the Renaissance. The Renaissance artists were great lovers of beauty, beauty of nature and the beauty of human form. They loved beauty in all its phases, sensuous, intellectual, and spiritual. Milton, though a Puritan, was a passionate devotee of beauty. In Paradise Lost, we have a memorable graphic description of natural world of beauty, of the Garden of Eden, of Adam and Eve. Dear students, now we are going to discuss the summary of Book 1 of Paradise Lost. As the poem Paradise Lost opens, John Milton expresses the theme of the whole epic, that is, man's first disobedience, which brings sin and death. Milton asks the heavenly muse to help him to write a poem with such a grandeur theme. The invocation to the heavenly muse shifts to an invocation of the Holy Spirit and ends with the poet's great purpose. That is, to justify the ways of God to men. Milton's professed aim is to show that God was just in his punishment to man. Milton highlights Satan's sin, his revolt against the Almighty that caused him to be cast out of heaven. On account of his pride, Satan wanted to be equal to God, and with this end in his view, he raised impious war in the heaven. Milton then describes hell as a dungeon horrible, where peace and rest can never dwell and hope never comes. John Milton describes the miserable and torturous condition of Satan and his followers suffering in a fiery hell. John Milton also throws light on Satan's unconquerable will and unflinching pride. Satan discovers Beelzebub, the next angel in rank, rolling by his side in the lake of fire. Satan conceals the despair he is facing and boasts that he is not totally lost. He is still unconquered. Satan was filled with hatred and courage never to submit or yield, and ready to find out how he can best take revenge from God. Satan refuses to show any sign of weakness. He expresses a determination that if God brings good out of their evil, there is in turn will again bring evil out of good. Satan declares himself as the ruler of hell. Satan asks his companions to follow him. In book number 1, Satan proceeds to gather his companion around him by a mixture of flattery, threats, and sarcasm. Milton describes the huge shield of Satan, which is hanging on his shoulder like the moon. His spear is even bigger than the tallest pine tree found on the Norwegian hill. The multitudes of angels floating on the lake of fire is like the autumn leaves scattered on the brooks in Vallombrosa, or the scattered seeds floating on the sea, or to the floating dead bodies. Milton then enumerates the fallen angels, which are now devils, by giving them the names. The first is Moloch, an Ammonite god to whom children were sacrificed. The second is Balaam, who is worshipped by Phoenicians, Themis, who is worshipped by the Syrians, and Belial, who filled with lust and violence. Belial had palaces of worship at many different courts and places. Belial loved vices for its own sake. Satan makes a vehement appeal to his fallen companions to carry on the war by fraud or by guile. In this response, the angels cheers their leader, the fallen angels. The Mammon, whose greed has been known in heaven, where he kept his looks fixed on the golden pavements, led some of his fellows of the heaven as they ransacked the bowels of Mother Earth for gold and other precious metals. With amazing speed, these fallen angels built a palace called Pandemonium for Satan and his followers. Milton narrates that how all the devils flocked to Pandemonium, the devils reducing their sizes so as to accommodate themselves in that very palace. Thus, this is the great consultation begins of the fallen angels in the great hall of Pandemonium. Dear student, this is the complete summary of book number 1 of Pardise Lost. In this video, we have already discussed the biography of John Milton, the age of John Milton, the element of Renaissance found in the John Milton's poetry, and summary of Pardise Lost, book number 1. Thank you.